All discussions and interactions are meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. They're not intended to breach the ATA Code of Conduct, single out any student or educator, or diminish professional integrity in any way. I'm Conrad Drover. Join me as I sit down with inspiring professionals from diverse fields to gain valuable insight from their experiences and knowledge to help me grow as both an educator in the classroom and as a person in all areas of my life. This is Professional Development. Today, I'm joined by Molly Maguire, a humanities teacher in Southern Alberta who is currently in her second year of teaching. In this episode, we talked about how Molly's educational background influences her teaching, the role of discussion and performance in humanities education, the cross-curricular connection between science, humanities, and drama, and the ways she's working to make history more engaging for her students. We also get a glimpse of Molly's personality outside of teaching, including her deep fandom for Doctor Who, how she writes a novel every summer, and her participation in local theater. Let's dive in. So, Molly Maguire in Crossfield, Alberta.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
How far back in time do you want to go on that story?
I want to know your experience in like school and how you got to be a teacher in general, and then we could get to how you got to Alberta.
Cool, because the short story is they offered me a job here, and I'm like, cool, where's Crossfields? And I looked it up, and I was like, cool, that's half an hour from my place. I can do that. The long story is, so I went to an IB elementary school, so it was a neat way of doing things there. And then I went to a discussion-based high school. So our entire high school was centered around the idea of discussion-based learning. So we would sit around giant tables. It's called Harkness tables. That's the official type of discussion-based learning they were doing. We would sit around giant tables and we would just talk about every single subject. We'd do readings as homework to prepare for the discussion, and we would talk through all the subjects, all the ideas going on there. And that is my education. I did not raise a hand until I went to university, and then I didn't in university either. It was really awkward.
Well, okay, so I remember back when I was in high school that there's like some kids, not me, that were in IB. What does IB stand for?
IB stands for International Baccalaureate. I don't know a whole lot about it because I only was in there until I was 13, and then I haven't looked into it since.
What's a baccalaureate?
I don't know.
But you're one of them.
Yes,
Yeah.
a bit. But it's essentially just like an international system of teaching, and it has like ways of doing things, like systems of inquiry. I haven't researched this a whole lot because I haven't looked at it since I was 13, but it does shape how you do things a bit, so I hear.
Because so when I was in school, like they didn't have like the dashes they have here in Alberta, like -1, -2.
I didn't either. I'm from BC.
Yeah, they had like well they did, but they didn't. But in like math, they had consumer, applied, and pre-cal.
Yeah.
And then there's some stuff that had AP, and then above AP, if you're like super nerd,
Yeah,
they had IB, right? So like that was like the tier. So only like the smartest people have ever
from
done
what I
it.
hear, high school IB is like intense,
Right.
but I didn't do that.
Oh, so what grades were you in with IB?
K to 7.
Okay, so it's like I get.
So it's the technical terms. I was the PYP program, so the primary years program, and then I had a bit of the middle years program, so the MYP. So they kind of do stuff with that.
Okay, and so you're from Brandon, Manitoba
From
originally.
Vancouver originally.
Okay, you're from Vancouver.
Grew up South Surrey, but it's Vancouver. It's like the suburbs.
Yeah.
Well, it's Sun City, but so yeah, I'm from Vancouver. I grew up there, lived there for 18 years of my life. Then I went to university in Lethbridge. And so I popped back and forth, obviously, universities and summers between Vancouver and Lethbridge. And then my mom moved back to Brandon, Manitoba, and then drive an hour out of that.
Yeah.
And that's where my mom's from. So she just moved back there. So I lived there for a bit and popped back and forth. Technically, legally, I lived there according to the government. Between Manitoba and Lethbridge when I was doing university for a bit. And then I graduate university. I'm technically homeless for a couple weeks, but I'm kicked out of dorms. My rent doesn't start in Calgary until a couple weeks later.
Yeah, that shift, like, so like in like my story or whatever, I graduated university like April 25th, and then I got the job for Fort McMurray in my first Alberta job May 1st. So like that rush to get the rent, and like I had family up there, so that was different. You were just like Calgary, solo? Like you didn't bring any family or anything like that?
I have a great aunt who lives in Lethbridge, and her kids live in Calgary.
Right.
I've met them twice, so
Okay.
didn't really
Yeah.
talk with them much. But all my friends are from here, so they really helped me out finding a place where I said, "Hey, I need to live somewhere.
Hmm.
Where shouldn't I live? Where are kind of the better areas?" So we spent 10 minutes going over coffee, and she looked at a site and found me a bunch of places, and I was like, "Cool."
Not Forest Lawn.
I think that was on her list of no's. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, but so did that make was that part of your decisions because you had friends that were
Yeah.
here? Okay. So did you apply anywhere else, like in Canada?
Well, so I did look into it because I would love to go back to Vancouver, maybe ever, I don't know, because it is home. It is more harder. I love the ocean. But you have to do paperwork. And I
Right.
looked at the paperwork and I didn't like the paperwork.
So wait, so your original teaching certificate
Is Alberta.
Alberta, because Lethbridge,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so it is a pain in the ass. It truly is, because I had my Manitoba teaching certificate. They give you a temporary one,
Hmm.
and then I couldn't transfer my temporary one. I needed my full one. So I was teaching here 2 months without a teaching certificate. They gave me like a letter of authority, which I found out like 2 years later, the letter of authority wasn't made until like August, and I was teaching since May. And we're like, the process of transferring and doing twins and everything like that, you dodged a bullet because it is such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, at least if I was going back to BC, they do have like systems between the two provinces,
Yeah.
which was nice. And I checked my requirements for university to make sure I could go over there if I needed to. But a lot of it was like, what schools have you teached at? What are your evaluations as a teacher? And I'm like, cool, I haven't done any of that. It wasn't set up for people who are graduating from university and going straight into teaching. There's like, they assumed there's going to be at least some experience there. And I didn't like it and it was scaring me. So I just said, fine, I'll stay in Alberta for a bit.
I'm like thinking that you are actually more prepped to be like the quintessential teacher based on, and like I'm saying that because you had that IB, right? And you said your classes were different. They were more, and then you moved to like a discussion based after, like, I guess that's in high school.
Yeah.
Right.
12th.
So that was like private school, right?
Yeah,
Like,
this was a private school experience.
Okay.
Because South Surrey, my parents could afford to not send me to a South Surrey school. So
Right.
we were private.
But so what I'm saying is that discussion based learning that you did, and the IB stuff you did when you were younger, that aligns more, I find, to what the education, college, like faculty of education anywhere, tries to teach you what to do. Whereas where I went to school, Windsor Park Collegiate, Winnipeg, Manitoba, it was more general. Like it was like typical public school, and I kind of had a sense when I went to education that it was like they were teaching me, and not like maybe a week in, I was like, this wouldn't work at the school I went to. How did transitioning from being a student teacher to being on a full-fledged teacher, different school, different like town, different culture around it, what were some things that you were definitely not prepared for or surprised about being?
I will say my practicum experiences, though unordinary, were actually really well prepared. So my first practicum experience I did in Vancouver because of COVID. And so it was kind of, we had minimal supervision and they were kind of like, figure it out. So I actually taught more than I was supposed to. I ran the classroom for a whole day when we had a sub in. And then I also have a lot of summer camp experience too, where you kind of just try to keep the kids alive.
Mini you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then my third practicum, once again, unorthodox because I lost my second one due to a strike. And so our third one was once again, figure it out generally. But it was 3 months. It was the entirety of a first semester. And for 2 of the 3 months, I was alone in the classroom.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I felt really prepared me that wise, especially, I'd say, maybe time management as well. Cause I was teaching a lot. So the planning wise, though I was teaching the same class 4 times. So planning-ish was there.
Well, you focus more on like how to teach, rather than
it was very much in
multiple
the classroom, and that was really helpful. But I'd say the probably biggest shift for me actually was between these 2 years. So my first year teaching, the biggest adjustments for me weren't so much as a teacher, so much as a human trying to figure out adult life.
Right.
because I was doing this in a new place. My friends had to move here yet. They were still finishing up university. I knew no one. I was doing this all alone, thrown into our school, dealing with all that. My personal life also fell apart. So that was kind of my biggest troubles, first year teaching. But this year is kind of been the biggest pedagogical learning curve per se, where I'm seeing more challenges that I am struggling with. Like classroom management is kind of my biggest struggle. It was in practicum, it still is. And it's a bigger challenge now with the bigger fires to put out with the kids. And one of the neatest, not neat, I'm gonna say neatest things was figuring out how to adjust discussion-based learning, because that's how I teach. That's what I love to teach. That's kind of how my brain works for each group, because this is not a discussion-based school. They don't have these skills. They never just learned through discussion-based teaching. So trying to figure out where are the kids at in their discussion skills, how comfortable they are doing discussion, and kind of figuring out what mix of discussion strategies work for each group.
Yeah, like I struggle with that, and like I'm going on in my like 6th year teaching. Yeah, the common thing is like we learn all like because we understand as like adults that we learn better by talking to each other, like that social constructivism, building something off that, and just understand like sort of I call it like translating in your head, because you have to, like, in order to make something from something, you have to translate it,
Yeah.
understand it, and then produce it. And then you do that better when you're with like social peers, right?
Yeah, it's basically vocalizing the thought process.
Yeah. So like we all know that on paper, that's how to do it, right? But like just like you, I have class management problems all day long. And there are some times where I actually have to like change my classroom to be more lecture based, more strict, more rules. Not necessarily something I like to do, but I understand that at this point in time, they are going to get the information better this way. And I would just want to like, how do you manage to do that discussion based, even with a group of, let's say, like apathetic students or students that just they want to do good, but they're just so easily distracted. You put them in groups and they talk about everything but what you want them to talk about. How have you managed that in like the last couple of years?
So one thing I've started leaning more into, because it mixes well with the lecture style a bit more, is more of a Socratic seminar method, where it's very much still teacher guided. So a Harkness method is very much egalitarian, where we sit in a circle because everyone has an equal voice. So if there's 13 people at the table and the teacher, everyone has 1/14 of the conversation, including the teacher. But with more of a Socratic seminar version of doing this, the teacher leads the discussion. They bring the questions, they ask people, and they kind of lead and guide things. So I find that works better when they don't have those discussion skills to manage the conversation themselves. So this is where, like, you ask a question, they put up a hand, you can ask follow-up questions or ask other people, like, oh, do you agree with what so-and-so said? Or can we add on to what so-and-so said? So I find that works when you're kind of not there with discussion skills. I'm still working through the apathy and trying to get kids engaged in discussion, but there's kind of a few things you can try. Like, one strategy that I forget which book recommended is kind of like controversial statements. You put like a statement on the board and you go, do you agree, disagree with this? And you make them make a
Start a
choice.
fight. Yeah.
Yeah, you start a bit of a fight.
Yeah.
I also hold so I have my groups currently in table groups, and so I hold every table group to the expectation of, you had time to talk. You need to provide an answer. If you're making this up on the spot because you did not talk, fine, but you need to have some sort of answer.
Right.
And I'm trying to. Generally, we just wait in silence while they sit and think. We're like, because thinking is part of a discussion. Silence is okay in a discussion because that's just thinking time. People are thinking through ideas, suggesting stuff. So we can give you the time to think.
Right.
So just sit in silence until you have an idea. And so usually they pick up on the fact that we are going to make you have an idea. Use the time to talk.
Right. I think that's a good idea. Like you're just waiting, right? And then giving them that, I guess, freedom to be like, well, even if you don't like say something, right? Anything. And like you're obviously gonna get like trash bag answers sometimes,
That's
right?
the art of the spin. You can
Right.
spin anything to on topic if you have to. Usually, there's like obviously stuff you can't, but it's all 80% of things you can. If they make it educated, yes, that's great.
What particularly in your background makes you really good at presenting yourself outwards like that? It almost seems like your social studies class and your other classes almost have a sense of theater to them.
Oh, are you trying to transition into my theater background?
A little
My
bit.
other passion of
Yeah,
my heart.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a background in theater. Theater's been a deep part of my life since probably about the 8th and ninth grade. Even before then, I was making movies, doing little plays with my friends. But yeah, I've did theater all throughout high school. I've done pretty much every job you can in theater. I've done sound design, I've done lighting design, I've done costume design. I'm currently making puppets. I've acted, singing, directed, written.
Tell me more about that. So like, is your background like purely like hobbyist, or do you have like experience in any like professional plays or like amateur plays? Like,
Um,
how did you get into that? Let's say it like that.
uh, so I've always loved storytelling. I've been storytelling since I was in kindergarten. I remember writing a little book and giving it to my kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started my first. So I made a lot of movies in elementary school. I remember my first movie was with my dolls. My dad was like, "Hey, here's a camera, film it." I was like, "Cool." So I did that through probably grade 4 through 8 was movie making and film and storytelling that way. And then I transitioned to theater in grade 9 because I found more opportunities to tell stories in my theater class in high school. And then, yeah, I ran through it through all high school, became we had a board of stewards. It's like our student government. I was the student head of our drama department on the board of stewards. I was a drama steward. And then I did, my minor is in drama education after a deep crisis one summer of, do I do history, theater? Do I do history? Do I become a teacher? Or do I become a playwright? And then so I did a bit of theater in university just for academics because I was just busy with life. But I kept writing plays. That's kind of my writing background is in playwriting. That's why I taught myself character and scene and plot was through plays because I did all that throughout high school. Then I moved here, and then for my first year in Calgary, I didn't do a whole lot just because I was focused on surviving. But when one of our coworkers said, "Hey, I'm part of this musical theater troupe. You love theater. You love musicals. You should audition and join." And so I did, and I joined them. And so now I do amateur community theater.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I've met some amazing people, and then I've been roped into building puppets for a puppet show too now.
Building puppets.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And like I can't even fathom that because, well, I can, but like when you talk about like your upbringing when you're like 8 and you're like making little videos and made little books, like you have no idea how similar that is to my
I know I've heard your stories.
right? So like I used to make like little fan films like Nightmare on Elm Street, but Nightmare on Conrad Street, and like but even before that, I used to like go on like MS Paint and make like little comic books.
Oh yeah,
like,
the comic book
yeah.
it's like you go from books to comics to movies. That's
But
the
I
routine.
just like I never knew how to like and mine wasn't as artistic. Like I would like find like it would be like a Yu-Gi-Oh character versus like another guy. Like I had crossovers all the time, and I would just like copy and paste like pictures of the characters on from Google onto like MS Paint and then write text box. But like I had no like understanding of reading like left to right or like is it left to right? Okay. You. So like anyone that wasn't me would have no idea what the story because it changed. Like it went left to right and the right to left, and it's just like weird because I was like, oh, it's zigzags. No, that's not how you do it. But
I mean, you could if you design the panels in the right way.
what I like actually, and I hold this to some of my success as a teacher, right? Just being able to run your classroom in a way that everyone can express themselves and everyone is not afraid to like fail, because that's a lot of theater, right? It's like failing, like, oops, that happened. And then like it's almost like training your class or conditioning your class to work as a unit.
I forget the title of the book, but there's one quote from this book I read. The quote's by Kathleen Broadbeek, I believe. The classroom is a place for academic play.
Yeah,
because
that works. I like
it's
that.
academic play because it's still play because play is investigating, play is taking on new roles, play is asking questions, play is more than just moving around toys, but it's academic play. We're doing all those things, but with school. And that's kind of one of my core philosophies, actually.
So I want to get your take on this. I was telling to my grade 7s today because I told them they had a presentation. And of course, half of them were like, what do you mean a presentation? I can't presentate. And they usually state anxiety or some other fear of presenting. And I told them like straight up today, I was like, the reason, and I want to see if you agree with me with this, the reason why you have such anxiety is because you're unpracticed. And I told them that things that can alleviate anxiety are being prepared. So understanding the task you have at hand. So if I'm giving you a presentation on a certain amount of a topic,
Mm.
you better know that topic, right? So alleviating anxiety, one of the first steps I would do is like do it well, like study, remember, practice.
Yeah.
And then the other part of anxiety is to alleviate it is to have fun with it. Like make it like you have to make a little bit of fun of yourself, I find. Do you agree with that? That like some of this anxiety that we might be seeing is just a lack of exposure. Like in terms of like it's hard to present in grade 11 if you've never been expected to present in grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So what do you think about that? And if you disagree, like what are ways with your theater background, what are ways that you think that we can help alleviate anxiety in our students for presenting or just the fear of failure?
Yeah. So firstly, the idea of preparedness, I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I say it in other words often. Yeah, it's 100%. If you don't rehearse, you're not gonna know what you're doing, and you're gonna be scared about it.
Right.
Yeah, probably exposure plays a role. It's like the negative feedback loop. Don't know how much I can speak to that. One other thing my school did is they forced us every single grade from I think grades 1 through 12. We had a speech day, a whole day dedicated to presenting a speech in
Wow.
front of others
Yeah.
every year. But on the flip side, though, I have stage fright. I am terrified of singing in front of people. Like I was rehearsing with my musical director last week, and I almost started crying in front of her just because we were sitting in a room alone, and I was trying to sing in front of her. But one thing I've really embraced, and maybe this advice you can pass on, is just do it scared.
Right.
Embrace the anxiety. Say, yeah, I'm scared. And
Yeah.
what? You still have to do it. There's a lot of things you have to do scared. Like I'm also scared of driving to new places. I still have to go there.
Exactly.
So just embracing the idea of doing it scared. And then, yeah, maybe it'll get less scary as you learn that you're not going to get beaned with tomatoes.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, like I would never have thought that you had stage fright ever, just because
You ever heard me sing?
how eccentric. No, but that would be beautiful. Um, but like the idea of like, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm still gonna do it, right? And I guess like that's like the definition of bravery, right? Like you can't be brave if you're not scared.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like what you're talking about that speech day,
Mhm.
you didn't really like it that much.
No, I was okay with it.
You were
I have
okay,
friends who hide under. No, I say the best speech day story I can give you is one of my best friends, knew her since we were 3. Our first speech day, she hid under her chair and refused to come out. By the end of grade 12, she was athletic steward and doing announcements in front of the whole school.
right?
About
She eventually got there.
Yeah.
And I think in training training like the concept of progressive overload, that like you slowly but surely increase your workload and eventually you adapt.
Well, that's what you
right?
can do with presentations as well. You can present in front of a friend. Okay, how about my table group? Okay, how about my class? Okay, how about the school? And that's kind of to circle back to discussion-based learning.
Wow.
That's partly why I do it is like, okay, we can start with just talking to your table group and have the confident one report back to the whole class. And then hopefully by the end of the year, you'll feel comfortable reporting back to the whole class what you did the thinking with the whole group. So you're not just taking the risk by yourself.
Right.
You're getting comfortable talking in front of others just in a very casual, low stakes environment, not a fancy presentation.
Sort of like divvying up or diluting the risk, right? You're spreading it out, right? You're sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all on agreement on that. And in science, because we teach curriculums, like in your intro, I'm gonna tell like what you teach.
Yeah.
Maybe remind me. But like social studies, right? For sure. And then like I teach science. And believe me, there is so much overlap that you wouldn't even know. Like we're doing like plants for food and fiber and
Social studies is
ecological, right?
That's the whole point of it.
And what I told the kids, I was like, listen, like social studies is going to tell you how things are worked, how to express yourself, how to vote, how your voice is being
What to do with
amplified,
information you learn in science.
right? Exactly. But you need the information to be an informed like voter,
Yeah.
right? And I told them about policies and regulations and like just realities. But I told them like you could know all this stuff, and if you don't know how to communicate it, you are totally SOL. Like there is, and then that's why I gave marks for their presentation, because I'm like, you could be the smartest person in the
An
world.
effective scientist can communicate their findings.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I like. That's the thing I think that was missing in public health recently, is because you have really smart people that don't know how to convey their message without sounding super weird, right? Um, like the pandemic was a huge thing about that. Like,
Oh, I was in BC for that. We
yeah,
had a lovely spokesperson in BC. She was so calming and kind. It was like, oh, we'll listen to Dr. Henry talk. She's such a calming
is
voice.
this sarcasm?
No,
No?
like you should listen to her voice. It is lovely,
Yeah.
soothing.
I think it was like the Canada one. Like
Oh, I
the
didn't watch it.
she like again like any scientifically literate person would kind of understand it what they're saying, but it rubbed people the wrong way because it just sounded like some like person that was dressed up as a human explaining what to do, right? Um, so I told them, I was like, you need to understand this and be able to communicate it to people that don't know it. So like lots of the poster projects I do, or like I try to make brochures and like tell them to communicate it, but you have to communicate this to your younger sibling. How do you communicate this to a fourth grader? And then they have to really think about their language and how to communicate it. And I think in like our current, like when these students are age appropriate to like make decisions and like be like informed citizens, that their ability to communicate to other people about science is at most important, because not everyone can be an expert. And I think that's what's a problem right now, is everyone sort of doesn't believe in the expert right now. And people are losing faith in the experts in everything, in like
Mhm.
arts, like literature, and then of course science, right? They're like, well, what do they know? I was like, I don't know. They went to 7 years of school for it or whatever, but they have a terrible time breaking down large, like really complex situations and simplifying them so they can be actionable, right? And that's where I think the the stuff you learn in theater and the stuff and then interchange with social studies, but really the way of communicating theater, like you have to address emotion, you have to understand your audience.
You have to understand your objective. What do you want? How are you going to get it?
Exactly. And that's what I think we need to do in our school system right now. And I think right now you're doing it. And that's
I'm
pretty sweet.
trying.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a basic thing in the English language is the idea of ethos, logos, and pathos. So those are the three big ways of persuading people. And you could bring that to theater of the idea of everyone has an objective and you want to think about how you're going to do that. And it usually is a statement about it's usually a verb. It's like, I want to convince you. I want to persuade you. I want to, some verbs. And so when you're writing a piece, you're not just 9 times out of 10, you're never just writing just to throw words on a page. There's usually some purpose to it. And so you want to think about how you're going to do that. So are you going to are you going to appeal to authority? Are you going to appeal to people's hearts? Are you going to appeal to logic? So those are all techniques that in the English language arts to convey things, to manipulate your message into a way that'll be most palatable to the audience you want to convince.
Wow. Can you talk to my class, sorry? With that, because like you did a little like eyebrows, like trying, right?
Yes.
What, like, could you either through like a story, or can you tell me when like you tried to do that, or you tried to teach, you had a great idea and then it all went to hell?
So many to choose from.
Because like it's good in practice, like when we
Yeah.
talk about this in theory, it's like, oh well, why don't everyone talk about the logos, right? Like, you know.
I think the disconnect I'm finding is trying to meet the writers where they're at. And so I talk about these ways of convincing people, these persuasive techniques you can use. But a lot of the writers I've been working with aren't really there yet in their writing. They're still really much working on their paragraph organization, their sentence structure, kind of the more nuts and bolts bit before we get to the artistry of what they're trying to do. So I wouldn't say it went off the rails per se, but that kind of got forgotten along the way, where I talked about it like, hey, yeah, if you're writing a court argument to convince us to not put Ponyboy in a children's home opposed to leaving with his family, how are you going to appeal to the court? How are you going to appeal to the judge? You can try these different ways. And no one really did, because they were mainly focused on trying to just write the
Right.
thing.
So do you think it's like a syntax thing where like they just don't know how to write well enough to express their ideas? Or do you think that developmentally they just don't have the depth of thinking to really think past like the surface level on stuff,
I think it depends on the student.
right? Or grade, I
Yeah, the
guess.
grade too. I'm still getting used to middle school writers because I've been teaching for 2 years. I haven't read a plethora of writing yet. And where I was at as a writer is different than when they were a
Right.
writer.
I find when you're like really good at something, like for me, like it's athletics or like science or video editing for sure. Um, it's like I skip instruction a bit because I'm like I think things as self-evident because I know it so well.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's more difficult to teach sometimes because I have to like backtrack my steps because I do it automatic sometimes in my head. Do you find that?
Um, I would say yes, but at the same time, I had maybe the luck of helping a friend through university with his papers, where he kind of came to me, was like, I don't know how to write a paper, and I had to help him through writing a paper. He grew so much over those few years. Um, but that's already started me thinking about how do I teach someone how to write a paper, because he always came to me the 11 o'clock the night before to do. How do I write this paper? Cool. How do we get this conveyed to you in the simplest possible way? Because we have like 4 hours to do this.
Yeah.
So that started me thinking, and then I'd say it's almost like trial and error. Like every time I teach something, it gets better each time
Yeah.
because I've figured out the kinks and everything. So for example, with my eights, we did like the court arguments, the persuasive writing earlier in the year, and I came into it with an assumption of what they knew and what they didn't know, and I assumed they knew more than they did, but that's okay. That's where they're at. Um, so they didn't have a lot of the fundamental structures I was looking for in an essay. And I kind of didn't allot the time to teach the two of them, and I kind of brushed over a lot of stuff. However, then I was teaching the grade sixes how to write essays in January, and I was able to break it into a formulaic structure. This is a topic sentence, you followed by this, and then this, and then that. And so it was almost like a fill in the blanks for them.
Right.
And
Uh,
so that was something from my own experience as a writer where I looked at all my essays of this structure. And I was like, okay, what are the common themes in here? What are those common structures that I can break it down into more formulaic pieces for them,
Right. So
but making them figure it out on their own?
like you were scaffolding your friend and
Yeah.
then that sort of gave you sort of a template to work with people. And
Yeah.
like I guess I see the same thing with when like coaching, like I parrot what my coach says half the time to like students, right? Um yeah, like I was on the other end of that in university. I had like a group of writers, like they were my editors. Like one is now a lawyer.
Oh, nice.
And like she like edited my stuff and stuff like that and she made fun of me the whole way through. But like I got better at it,
Mhm.
right?
No,
Because
it started off with me sitting there, like, walking him through writing each sentence. He would say it out loud, I'd say it back to him, and he'd type it in, and then it got to a point where I just had to be in the room with him to keep him on task.
right. Hey,
Yeah, pretty much, and I can
yeah.
sit there doing my own work.
And that's essentially what I do with my grade 11s,
Yeah.
like in like Comtech and stuff like that. It's like they know what to do now, or they have the ability to like start it and stuff like that. So, and it's nice when they get to that point, right? And it's nice when they actually start working and like doing things that you didn't ask them to do that would like increase their grade.
Mhm.
Like, I know totally different topics, but it's like when like video editing, right? I told them like in order to like this assignment requires doing this, this, and this, right? And then they start doing other things like, oh, I'm gonna zoom in and punch it on this face because it's hilarious. I was like, I didn't tell you to do that, but do that,
Mhm.
right? Do you ever see that in writing?
My kids aren't big writers, so I haven't really helpful.
They're developing,
Yeah.
yeah. I know, and also like
I
the
mean,
longer you're in
some of the writers I have read were like, I asked them to write a short story, and I got like, how long was it? Like 7 pages handed to me. It was long, but it was good.
right,
So I enjoyed it. Oh my God, their poems are so good. Like
a realm where I have no
I just sat there one night, like, oh, I guess I'll do this marking. And I was like, oh, this is a fun night for me. I'm just marking all their poems and
oh my God.
And so I said to them, I'm like, okay, extra credit for ELA, write me another poem. And this is entirely selfish. I just
Oh,
want to read
you do
more of
want
them.
to read it,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome, and I think that is like the glory of teaching. Like that is where you're like locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had that for like my like when students did like video announcements for me. Like the way I marked, I was so excited to get home and like show like my girlfriend the news. And if she didn't know what the hell was going on, their mark went down because I was like, well, it was too loud or too quiet or you mumbled all the way through. And like now Olivia has no idea what's going on at a Cole McTavish or whatever. So like obviously you fix that. And that is like when things are like oh, teaching is like so hard and stuff like that, that's what makes it worth it. I
Yeah,
think
there's a pile of good things and a pile of bad things, and the pile of good things usually wins.
one more question before I want to see what you brought here. What is one thing you want people to understand about the teaching profession that's not usually explicitly communicated in the media?
Ooh. It's not always the same as what you think it is. Like every classroom is different. Every teacher is different. Every experience is different. So people's understanding of what is teaching and what is schooling is very localized and very individual. So each person, whether or not they've been in a classroom in the last 10, 20 years, is unique to themselves. So what your understanding of what teaching is an understanding, but it's not the only understanding. So if someone's like, oh yeah, teaching's always like this and that, so why would teachers do this? I'm like, cool. That's one understanding and one experience with school and teaching. But everyone approaches it differently. Everyone sees it differently. Everyone has their own goals, their own passions, their own ways of teaching.
And they almost have a biased opinion on their experience, right? Because everyone's been to school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something like a lot of other professions don't have to deal with, like the backseat driver.
Yeah.
Because not everyone went to a hospital and looked at doctors for 8 hours a day during their youth, right? But everyone has like a sense of school. So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, like their perception, like they prioritize their own perception.
Yeah.
And then
Like,
they make
that's-
assumptions on it.
And not valid perception, because yeah, that totally is
True, but it's not complete.
Yeah, it's not
right?
complete. It's not the whole story. It's not everyone's classroom. It's not every teacher.
Yeah. It's a necessary perception or a view of it, but
Mhm.
it's not sufficient.
Yeah.
You want the wide.
They always be open-minded to new ways of learning, teaching, doing new stories.
Interesting. I like that. I like that answer a lot. I wasn't I wonder if my other guest will have such a great answer. That's the question I'm going to ask for, like at the end, near the end of every podcast. Let's see that big, thick book that you have down there.
My chunk of text, it's chunky.
Okay, please explain.
So every summer I read a book, because why not?
Hold up. So every summer you write like a novel?
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah, pretty much every summer. Yeah.
Like, okay, like I don't think you understand how wild that is. Like, there's people, their whole life's goal is to write a book,
Well,
right?
they're not good.
Okay, well, have you published them?
No.
So has anyone read them?
Okay, Maddie's
What's your
read half of
sample
this one.
size?
Yeah.
So your friends read half of that one?
Yes, because then she's a first-year teacher, so she's just trying her best.
Right. Okay, everyone is. So tell me about that one.
So this one is the one I wrote last summer. It literally came to me in a dream. I woke up from a dream. I was like, hey, that's a good idea for a book. And I wrote it down. So this is called The Living Society of the Dead. And it is essentially about what if immortals were really rich people who could pay for the potion, and they were so bored and detached from death that they held murder mystery parties and stabbed people. And for insurance purposes, they had to give them the immortality potion as well.
Well, a good wealthy exploiting the poor sort of.
That is a theme in the book.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of editing right now. So this is my first draft.
Right.
Fun fact about me as a writer, I don't write by chapters.
No? How do you format it or
I write
organize
by
it?
scenes, because my background is as a playwright.
Right.
So I write scene by scene, so location-ish, well, theme-ish. So yeah, there's no chapters in here. That's all these sticky notes are. I went back in later and actually figured out where my chapters would
Like
be. 'Cause,
retroactively?
yeah, I added them. So kind of one of my things when I'm editing is actually making it go back to look like I did that on purpose.
You know, if you do it well, no one will notice.
Exactly.
Well, like in terms of anyone, like you said that you haven't published any of them?
Not yet. I've looked into it. It's just on my books. This is the first draft. It's not at a point yet
Right.
where it should be published. There's a lot of question marks. Me going, write some sort of poem about Memento Mori, and then moving on.
You want to like make sure it's like
Yeah,
hip top shape.
as best as it can
Yeah.
be before I share it.
And like you've never published any of your other books?
No, because I haven't actually edited them yet.
Right. Okay, so once you start editing them, like you do plan on sharing
One
them
I
with the
really
world.
want to share with the world, because it started as a one act that turned into a musical that I was writing with a friend, and then She's doing other things in her musical journey and also going to med school. Yeah. So I'm turning that into a book. And because this story has lived with me for now like 9 years.
Yeah.
So I really want that one to be shared. This one is a more recent venture because that one needed a break.
Yeah.
Like, I want to publish
set
one
of
now.
eyes.
Yeah.
Cool. Like again, like you are probably the first and last person that I'll ever talk to that has wrote a book every summer, and I really do look forward to reading it or listening to it on Audible when I have
books
a
count.
chance. They definitely do because you're sharing the story, right? And like one little tangent before we go off to something else. I find like audiobooks and even like theaters, radio play, visual media has broken a barrier to entry for information for like everyone. Like stories, how many stories, how we're totally like inaccessible to people because of their literary skills.
Well, stories have been passed orally for time immemorial. So
Right. Before I let you go, we do have a little section here at the Professional Development Podcast, and it is a pop quiz. So this pop quiz is mostly catered to you.
Okay.
There is one wild question on a topic that I, at least legally, should be familiar with. Yeah, we're going to jump right into it. Which actor played the 9th Doctor in the 2005 revival of Doctor Who?
Do you want to read the answers or do you want me to tell you the answer?
I'll read the answers. Okay. Wow. You're confident. Is it A, David Tennant? Tennant. That's obvious.
Have you not heard of him?
I might have, but I'm really bad at remembering names and reading names.
Okay.
I'm a science teacher. Matt Smith. B. C. Christopher Eccleston. Okay. And then Paul McGann.
It is Christopher Eccleston.
Correct. 1 for 1. Okay, hopefully I can get through these questions without butchering everything.
Sorry, just
Good.
Fun.
No, definitely correct me, because I need more correction in my life. Question 2. What is the name of the Doctor's home planet? Is it A, Skaro? B, Gallifrey. Or C,
Raxacoricofallatorius.
Yes. Or D, Mondas.
It is Gallifrey.
You are correct. That's 2 for 2. Okay, so hopefully the next questions I can pronounce. Question 3. What phrase does the 10th Doctor say before regenerating? A, it's time to go. B, I'll miss you. C, see you soon. Or D, I don't want to go.
I don't want to go.
Correct again.
Tears are streaming down his face. He has a little bit of a catch in his breath.
3 out of 3. And I did not tell her these beforehand, so...
I would like the viewers to know that this is the easiest Doctor Who quiz so far.
Question 4. What was the first episode featuring the Weeping Angels? Is it A, The Time of Angels? B, Flesh and Stone? C, The God Complex? Or D, Blink? Correct again. I'm gonna add like a little cheering sound. Question 5. Who was the first companion to appear in the 2005 revival? Is it A, Rose Tyler? B, Martha Jones? C, Donna Noble? Or D, Amy Pond?
It is Rose Tyler.
Correct again. 5 for 5. Number 6. What are the Silents? Time Lords from an alternate universe. B, a religious order that causes people to forget them when they look away. C, a race of Cybermen from the future. Or D, creatures that only exist in the Doctor's mind.
B,
a religious order that causes people to forget them when they look away. Wow. That's not really good for like evangelizing.
That's not the point.
Okay. I know very little about Doctor Who. I watched the first revival season when I was a little kid with my mom, and then I didn't understand that they changed Doctor all the time. So when the season came and they like just switched the guy, I was like, nah. So I lost. Question 7. Are you ready for this?
Oh, yeah.
Who was the first female Doctor? Was it A, Alex Kingston, B, Michelle Gomez, C, Joe Martin, or D, Jodie Whittaker?
Whittaker.
Whittaker. Oh, Whittaker. I spelled that wrong.
Jodie Whittaker.
Jodie Whittaker is correct.
I mean, unless you're going, that's lore you don't need to get into.
I think I just gotta work on my pronunciations.
Yeah.
Question 8. In the episode The Day of the Doctor, which famous actor plays the War Doctor? Is it A, Ian McKellen, D, Derek Jacobi, C, John Hurt, or D, Charles Dance?
John Hurt.
Correct. 8 for 8.
He also showed up at the end of Time of the Doctor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it threw me and my friend when we saw it.
I really gotta watch this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question 9. We're almost done. What is the Doctor's real name? A, it is revealed in The Name of the Doctor. B, the Master says it in The End of Time. I guess I should rephrase the question. When was the Doctor's name revealed? C, it wasn't. It remains a mystery. Or D, River Song reveals it in the Husband and River Song episode.
We never know it. It's never revealed to the audience, so they reference it and whisper it a lot, but the audience does not know.
It remains a mystery. Correct again. 9 for 9.
And it doesn't matter, as I say. The Doctor is the Doctor.
I really thought I was going to stump you on something.
Bro, these are the most basic Doctor Who questions.
I know, but like they're so specific to like episodes. I underestimated your fandom. Question 10. Which villain said the chilling line, "Fear is a superpower"? A, the Dalek Emperor, B, the Master, C, the 12th Doctor, or D, Missy?
The 12th Doctor said it, but he's not a villain. You want to know the episode name too?
Sure.
That was in Listen. That would be season 8, series 8.
So I'll correct that. But yes, the 12th Doctor, he's not a villain. Like he didn't like turn evil or
the
anything.
main character.
Okay, wow. I shouldn't trust ChatGPT for everything.
Oh.
Question 11. What is the main function of the mitochondria in a cell? Is it A, storing genetic information, B, producing proteins, C, controlling what enters and exits the cell, or D, converting glucose into adenosine triphosphate?
I want to say it's the last one there.
Yes, it's converting food to energy, otherwise ATP.
Because, you know, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
That's great. I quizzed my grade 10s today and they couldn't tell me.
But that's like the most iconic
I know.
science for
Like
me.
you should know. That is amazing. You have 11 for 11. You hold the record for the professional development with Mr. Drover pop quiz
Nice.
score. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Having like your background with theater and then your like academic understanding of like social studies, I think that overall the students are lucky to have you.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited to work with you.
Glad to have you around as well.
All right. Thank you so much. See you later. Thank you for tuning in to Professional Development with me, Mr. Drover. I hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow educators. You can also connect with me on Instagram or via email to continue the conversation and share your thoughts. Well, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making a difference, both inside and outside the classroom. I'll see you in the next episode.